RPSM Talks.
RPSM Talks?
RPSM Talks?
RPSM Talks.
RPSM Talks.
RPSM Talks.
RPSM Talks.
RPSM Talks.
RPSM Talks.
Welcome, everyone. This is RPSM Talks, brought to you by Regent Park School of Music. Regent Park School of Music is a music school providing music lessons for both the Regent Park and Jane and Finch communities for over 20 years by removing financial obstacles. To learn more about the school, please visit www.rpmusic.org. I am Thompson. I'm your host once again for the 4th edition. Thanks for joining us. You can find me at Egbo Music on all the social handles. I'm there. You just have to look. Anyways, excited for our chat today. To begin, necessity is the mother of all invention, and Toronto did not know how much it needed Ebonnie Rowe to create the Honey Jam back in 1995. This has been a launching pad for many female artists, including Nelly Furtado, Kylie Evans, Julie Black, who has supported the music school, and many others. It has been an integral part of the Canadian music scene and in its 26th year. This platform would address the lack of female representation in the music industry. And just so you know, auditions are June 8th, if you are interested or know somebody who would be a perfect fit for it. She's founded a mentorship program called Each One Teach One, which roots are served in Regent Park, and they match Black youth with young Black professionals. And with a passion for community building, her FemFat entertainment group provides opportunity for female artists of all cultures and genres. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Jonathan Ramos, who's currently the director of live music for Inc. Entertainment and the creator of Rap Season platform. Jonathan has been promoting music and producing concerts for over 25 years. For some of the young folk, you'll know Daniel Caesar and Cardi B. As you get a little older, maybe Drake in The Weeknd. A little older than that, it'll be J. Cole and Eminem, although J. Cole just dropped an album, surprise. And for the really old cats, The Roots and Tribe Called Quest, among others. So originally started as REMG Entertainment, was the biggest rap, R&B, and reggae event buyer and promotion company in the city. REMG collaborated the Honey Jam in its inception to give the Honey Jam its first stage at the legendary Lee's Palace. Thanks again, Jonathan, for being with us. And our last guest as well is Justin Kwan. Justin is currently serving as the director of MRG Live, a national concert promotion company in Canada and the US. MRG Live is the largest independent events company in Canada and produces over 1,000 shows per year across North America. His career spanned over 9 years. He's produced a wide range of shows featuring Joji, Jesse Reyes, Jacob Collier, Lennon Stella, Lily Allen, and the list goes on. Justin, I was asked to ask you whether Scandal is going to be here in November, so you'll have to let me know.
I think that's going to be tough for November. We'll see what the government regulations are for any show in the fall. So,
well, hopefully we get opening up like the rest of the world. I'm excited. I'm always excited about all of our talks, but even more so, I'm excited just because me being a performer, I love the stage, and I think this is a role that is so. The roles that you guys occupy that are so behind the scenes, people forget that people like you even exist. Jonathan, I'm going to start with you just because you've been referred to as the Godfather, or the father of hip hop in the city. And my question for you is, how has hip hop changed in this city from when you first started promoting it to where it is now?
Firstly, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for having me. It's an honor to speak, and I'm looking forward to this. Yeah, I mean, it's evolved just like the music has. So when I started doing these shows, and in fact, before this started as a career for me, when I was going to shows, it was radically different. The music was, in its infant stages. When I say that music, it meant R&B and hip hop, and it was just developing. There was a scene, but it wasn't really sort of that large, and it was super niche. So it was difficult to produce shows, and it was sort of, for me, it presented daily challenges, which was, which is something that I'm somewhat attracted to sometimes. But it's radically different than what we know today, as far as this ubiquitous music that is the biggest hip hop, where hip hop is anyways the largest selling genre of its kind in the last probably 3 to 4 years globally. So that back then, it was trying to book a venue for shows, for rap shows, was difficult. Trying to get artists into the country was difficult to do rap shows. Everything was sort of, there were challenges there to at every level. But like I said, it's unfortunate that the music grew as I grew. So it's now for me turned into a career that that's helped me sort of like support my family and evolve.
Amazing. And Ebonnie, you've got the Honey Jam. And, one of the things I was saying to a friend of mine the other day, if we look at the Billboard, top whatever 100, and just even look at the top 10, there are Canadian fingerprints all over it. And people who have come through the Honey Jam have been Grammy nominated, have won Junos. Where does that fit? Again, sort of, asking sort of a similar question, but just in terms of now how the opportunities have opened. Where do you see the opportunities either for female artists coming out of Canada, the artists just in general, and how's that landscape changed for them? Oh, we got you on mute.
I think it's important for the younger people who are listening now to understand that when people like myself and Jonathan started in the early 90s, there was no social media. So imagine no YouTube, no Instagram, no Google, no Facebook, nothing. And so there wasn't much of an industry, and there wasn't an easy way for people to know who you were. When we would have auditions, people from outside of Toronto would be FedExing a VHS videotape to me. And probably half the people listening here don't know what that is. So a lot has changed because now anyone in the world can see what you do, can hear your music, and that has opened up so many opportunities. I mean, there wasn't even really a big music industry, I would say, at that time, 25 years ago. A lot of people were doing things for the love. Everything was really in its infancy. And there's been, I think, a 180 change. We could certainly use some more attention and promotion, and seeing some Canadian female artists get to a certain level. I'd love to see a Canadian hip hop artist, female hip hop artist, go big. But the sky is the limit, and I'm excited for what the future will hold.
That is awesome. Justin, I'm going to ask you a question because I know for everyone who's listening, everybody on this panel knows each other, been in the same space. And as I take it, Justin, you're the baby of the group. And so what I'm going to ask you is really just for your journey, what have you learned both from Ebonnie and Jonathan? I know that your paths across in how you coming into a little later with some of those tools that Ebonnie has mentioned that she hasn't had. How's it kind of made things easier for you, more challenging? What's your journey been like?
I think the tools that we have at our disposal, that's always going to change. I came up at a time when social media just was starting to become a really powerful tool that a lot of independent promoters could use. I mean, and Jonathan knows the story because I think he's heard it a million times at this point, but I had a regular day job. I had a regular day job and a career that I put my time in, and I put on shows not only for fun, but I had a lot of friends who were in the arts, and it was a good creative outlet for myself. At that time, using being savvy with Facebook, being savvy with Twitter, being able to harness just the collective power of a community or scene was our way of postering, doing the VHS or CDs or that kind of promotion. I was lucky enough that out of, I guess, my generation, I was able to convert that into a real career. But I think what doesn't change is, having a good ear, being grounded in where your place is within the musical community. I mean, one of the things I always knew from even early on was being promoters and being, these purveyors of art. We're a canvas. It's not necessarily about us, right? It's about, it's about the artists. It's about the fans. It's about creating an experience. And I think no matter what era or what tools are at your disposal, in the past or in the future, that aspect, I think, is going to hold true and consistent as time goes on.
Great. Ebonnie, I have a question for you just around, because you've done a lot of work. You're clearly a community builder. The work you've done is incredibly important to really the fabric and I'd say the culture and infrastructure that the city has. It's really around mentorship and, what you've done with FMFAT and how the role of mentorship and how important it is for specifically female artists getting into the industry, trying to figure out what are the right questions, who are the right people to go ask for those questions. And as they started to build on the role, what are some of the important things that you try to really instill, whether it's Honey Jam or just any of the platforms that you're using? I'd say one, why have you chosen to kind of go down that path? But two, what are some of the pitfalls, if not pitfalls, but what are some of the guiding lights that are important for people as they get on that journey?
Those are a lot of questions, Thompson. So we start with mentoring and the importance of that. I want to go back to the Each One Teach One mentor program that I started in the early 90s, which was for at-risk Black youth. And the whole idea of that was for Black kids to see themselves represented in places that they might want to be, which they might not see in their neighborhood. And the power of just seeing that example. And so just if they wanted to be in business and taking them to the 54th floor of a tower on Kingman Bay Street in the financial district and seeing a Black man sitting behind a desk in his own corner office with a view of the city, just the impact of that was immeasurable. And it's something that I love to see, how they would be inspired and how their focus would broaden. And so with Honey Jam, and basically with everything I do, I am about that mentoring and showing the kids people who care about them. And I remember taking some people to New York and taking them to the Essence Awards and giving them different experiences. And they would say to me that they didn't understand, why are these people willing to spend the time? They don't even know who we are. And they were really struck by that, people seeing them as valuable to invest in. So it's something that I am very strong about providing. And so that became a part of Honey Jam, not just the performance, but meeting people who were experts in their field who wanted to help you for no other reason than that they care about you succeeding, and giving you the opportunity to be in front of these people and pick their brains and let them guide you, let you know what educational requirements you need, where you might be able to get an internship, maybe be able to shadow them in their office, etc. So yeah, that's how I feel about mentoring.
Wonderful. Jonathan, I'm going to come back to you. And one of the things I'm actually curious about is, because you were a pioneer, you probably hate hearing it like that, but no one was really bringing, hip hop, R&B, reggae, that those weren't really, I guess the most popular forms at the time. Were you occupying that space by yourself? And if you were, what kind of gave you that encouragement to say, hey, this is needed right now, and this is something I can do?
I mean, it started out as a sort of a passion project. Just, like Justin mentioned, I had a day job, I had a career that didn't involve music. But just to touch on what you had said, there were people that were promoters and bringing people to Toronto for performances before me. I sort of stand on their shoulders. One person specifically, who I think most of you will be familiar with, Ron Nelson, who is, for him, I think the Godfather term in terms of the Toronto hip hop or black music scene is very appropriate. He probably doesn't like wearing it, but for him, like, I came up going to Ron's shows, and I was just sort of in awe of what he would do. And around that time in my life, I was looking for something. I don't know what I was looking for. I worked for the provincial government. I did sort of, it was a 9-to-5 office job. The job was great. Everything was great. I wasn't passionate about it. So I was sort of looking down the road thinking, like, can I do this for another 10, 15 years? I'd always sort of music had been a big part of my life. Not creatively, because I can't sing and I can't rap and I can't do any of that stuff. So, and I would go to Ron's shows. And around that time, Ron had sort of pivoted and changed direction. And which, he decided, and I knew through mutual friends, he decided he didn't want to do hip hop shows anymore. He's Jamaican, and he had started sort of dabbling more on the reggae side of it. So that left a void in terms of consistent quality performances in the city. And so I thought, what, let me just take a stab at it. I had no idea, what I was doing, but I thought, let me see. And, I always tell people, if I knew then what I know now, I probably wouldn't be doing this for a living. But it's there's a little bit of ignorance, a little bit of, blissful ignorance that's got to be involved in anything you start. But yeah, it just, one show turned into 2 shows, turned into 4 shows. And at that point, I had to sort of make a decision whether, I keep my day job or I do this for a living, because they were both interfering with each other. I was either going to get fired from my day job because I was sending faxes to agents during the day from the Ontario government office, so that was really kind of how it evolved for me. So I saw a void in the market. I saw something I could do that I was passionate about, and it was my life savings, but it involved me spending a lot of money at the time and just gambling it. And I didn't lose it all on my first show, thankfully. So I had made enough that I could put it into a second show, and I didn't lose all of that, but I put it into a third show, and then it just evolved. And before I knew it, it had become sort of a career for me.
So what was the first show, and what was that process like?
I go back to what Ebonnie said. This is for a lot of people in this room, it's kind of hard to understand, but this is sort of pre-internet. And I won't bore you with like my process, the specifics of the process, but I just, I was a big fan of music. I used to be a DJ in high school, and I decided, let me do a show with somebody whose music I love. And I started cold calling agents at the time. But my very first show was June 21st, 1993. It was a rap group from LA called The Far Side that had just put out, a year before, had put out their debut record. And for me, that's not even the most significant part. It's the opening act. There was an opening act of a band called Bass is Bass. That was sort of this Canadian funk trio at the time. But the opening act for them was this brown guy from Brampton named Russell Peters. So Russell was the opening act, and he did a 15-minute set, and he was a friend. I knew he loved hip hop, and I thought, why not? Let me try something different. So that was sort of like my first show ever.
And Russell DJs as well. So I've been to events where he's DJ.
Yeah, and he's like, Russell's like, he's a hip hop nerd. And that's really what drew me to him. He was a comedian, but he also could relate to that audience because he was a fan of the music as well. So that was one of the reasons. It wasn't just sort of like, let me find a comedian. Him and I were sort of, I knew each other. We had a lot of mutual friends. And I was just like, hey, you want to try this? He's like, sure, I'll try anything. And yeah, and I won't tell you what happened. I'll let you know, but it didn't work. It wasn't that great for him.
Justin, what was your favorite first show?
Oh man, well, hot tip. What happened is actually in Russell Peters' biography, so everyone caught that book. So, it's funny. It's I had a very similar story to to what Jonathan had mentioned. I was working in advertising, which on the account side, so not even on the creative side, not making any commercials, but just literally handling the budgets that go into making commercials. So and dealing with the client. So not the most fun advertising job you can think of, but I was quite young. I was just out of school, or a few years out of school at that point. I had progressed really quickly at a few agencies, and I think at that time I was a middle senior guy, which was nice when you're paying off your university debts. But yeah, no, I wanted a creative outlet. I love music. I had a lot of friends who were doing art, in the art scene. I guess they were like, "You're really good at organizing stuff." I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of do it for a living, unfortunately." So that's how actually I started doing shows, and one show became 2 shows, became 4 shows, became 8 shows. Became taking phone calls in the middle of the day in the alley beside the agency I worked in, whispering and people walking by and starting to talk really quietly, and then people asking what'd you do in the weekend? I'm like, oh, nothing, I just sat at home, didn't do any of that, didn't want to expose myself to any people in that culture, especially when people put in 20 hours a day, and that's just kind of the culture sometimes when it comes to advertising. But yeah, I mean, I got found out because of one of the activations I was working on. One of the people working on it called my cell phone and asked if they can do an activation at one of my shows. So that went downhill really fast, and I had to make a choice of what career I wanted to make, what I wanted to do. But no, the funny thing is, I actually I don't remember the artist that I booked my first show in. It was actually very uneventful. What I do remember is when you start out, nobody has your back. You gotta prove yourself. I remember I called at least 20 venues. Half of them didn't even have a PA. They weren't even, I don't even know how safe those rooms were, because a lot of them were dive bars. But I remember I didn't even get the main floor of a venue. I'm not going to name which one it is. It doesn't really even exist anymore. They gave me the basement. It literally, and they're like, you got to bring your own PA. I'm like, are you guys going to pay for it? Like, no, you got to pay for it. You got to bring in everything down yourself, but we'll give you the room. And I remember there was a lineup around the block for the show, and it was just a local band. And I don't think nothing really happened with kind of the artists that were there. It wasn't Far Side like Jonathan's story, who are still touring, by the way, I think. But I remember that there was like a dark metal band, people literally just dressed in all leather and with face paint, and they're playing on the top, on the main floor. And there was like 5 people that were watching them, and there was a lineup around the block in this place that probably fit 60 people. I mean, there must have been 80 in there, which is something I wouldn't do today, off the record maybe. But I remember the owner of the bar meeting me afterwards. He's like, I'm sorry. It's like, you get the main floor every single time now. And it's like, and you know, and I'm like, I'm so naive. And he's like, I'm like, do I have to bring my own speakers and like my own PA? He's like, no, they're literally up on the walls. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, that gave me, you know, that gave me a little, like a taste of what, you know, promoting in its pure form was like. I think, you know, as my career progressed, you know, the business is much different than what that was. I think, you know, that spirit and that hustle stays with you, and you know, and that kind of that excitement of putting something together from, you know, you conceptualize this idea from pretty much nothing, is still very exciting. But yeah, I think carrying gear down a flight of stairs probably, you know, I think those days might be over. So.
Yeah, my favorite shows are the ones I show up and everything's there for me.
Yeah.
Green room's there. It's, you know, you just play. You know, you don't even have to turn on the keyboard. Ebby, I've got a question for you around mentorship, and clearly a lot of the stuff you've done is based around mentorship, seeing yourself in those positions, having people to kind of show you along the path. So I'm curious about, you know, when you were putting on Hunjam or starting to put on your own events and different things like that, who are the people who supported you? What is your advice for people who are looking for a mentor? How do they find one? And you know, how many should they have? But what are the types of things that you really want to make sure that somebody's kind of looking out for you and you have a place to go ask some of these questions?
Okay, before we get to that, I want to encourage everyone who's listening to do the thing that you have a passion for doing. I think something that Jonathan, Justin, and myself all have in common is that that's what we have done and have been doing it for decades. And it's not something that I was told as a teenager. I was told to do the safe thing, the thing that you were going to get a good paycheck and good benefits, et cetera. And that's all fine and well. But if it doesn't feed your soul, you're going to feel a sense of emptiness. And so I had a good job as a legal assistant, and I too was risking my job every day, wanting to make a photocopy, and someone would say, oh, what's this honey jam thing? And I would just hide under my desk because I didn't want to lose my job. It was very stressful, but I loved what I was doing, working with young people and working in entertainment. And so whatever it took, I was going to find a way to do it. And I tell people, when you have a passion project, it means that you can't not do it, right? Like it's oxygen for you. And even though, as Jonathan said, like it might not even be the best thing in terms of your finances and your mental health and, you know, just all the stress that's involved. And yet you can't not do it. And so that's how I feel. So many people over the decades have been like, why are you still doing this honey jam thing? Like all of this. And, you know, you have to have that belief. And life is short. I think the pandemic has taught us that as well, that, you know, that the life that you have, make the most out of it and do what you love. In terms of mentoring, for me at the very beginning, sexual harassment was a huge issue for me and for all women. And so that was a challenge for me because all of the mentors in the industry were men. And so you would say to someone, hey, I'd like to learn about something. And they'd say, oh, okay, why don't you come by the studio around midnight? And then, you know, and everyone knows what that can turn into. So that was a challenge, being respected. So if I would go somewhere with a male in the music industry, just as a colleague, people would not see me in that way. They would think maybe I was a groupie or something like that. So that was very challenging. But I am a Leo by astrological sign. I'm a Black woman with attitude. And I was never going to be denied for what I wanted. I was never going to curl up in a corner and be like, oh, this is a little bit hard, so maybe I'll just go work in a drugstore, right? It's like, this is what I wanted to do. So somehow, some way it was going to happen. Now, Mr. Jonathan is and was one of my mentors. And one of the things, even though I complained to him about it, about his interactions with me, is that there's no coddling with Jonathan. Like, he's telling it to you straight up, and warts and all. And if he doesn't think it's a good idea, he's not going to tell you that it's a good idea. It's like, that's trash, Ebonnie. That looks stupid. That flyer looks outdated. Why are you doing that? And he will share with you what his experiences are, because he wants to see you win. And that's not always something that you will find. And so you can find it, and you get the vibe from the person when you meet them. It's like, either you're connecting in that way or you aren't. And some people might be a little bit shy and not feel comfortable to reach out to someone that they don't know. And sometimes they're going to say no, or they're not going to respond to you, or they're not going to make time for you. But for the things that you want in your life, you don't let anything stop you. You just keep trying. One of my biggest sponsors, I tried for 7 years, because it doesn't cost anything to try, to send an email or to make a call. So you have to be persistent, you have to be committed, and you have to know what's expected in order, especially to be an entrepreneur and to carry something on your back where you're the first person there and the last person to leave, and willing to pick up the garbage as well as be there in front of the cameras, right? So find your tribe, find the people that care about you. And, so if you're part of the Regent Park School of Music, then there's lots of people there, counselors, instructors, I'm not sure how it's set up, that you can go to and ask them, to help you find someone, to pair you with someone. So, yeah.
You know what? That's it. I'm glad you mentioned that, because while you're here, we get it straight from the source. Can you just break down the Honey Jam for us? Because we do have, students who potentially that could be something they could aspire to in the next year or two, or next three or 4 years, and just kind of the process they would go through if they wanted to be a part of something like this.
So first, you have to be female. This is an all-female event. And if you check out our website, it explains why that's the case and how we started. So we hold auditions, and you have 1 minute. There's judges, and you sing. It's all different cultures of people, by the way, and all different genres of music, from hip hop to country, opera, R&B, rock, pop, reggae, everything. So you have 1 minute. And so you are selected for the program based on your audition. And the audition is really just about your talent. And then once you get chosen, you go through the program, which is vocal and performance coaching, songwriting camps, music industry workshops on management, publishing, etc., different performance opportunities prior to the concert, media training, being able to hear from established artists like Jessie Reyes or Melanie Fiona. So those are the types of experiences that are part of this kind of 3-month window. And then we have the concert at the end of it, and we invite people from the industry who might be able to help you in your career. And then that's basically the end of the 3-month program. But being an alum of Honey Jam is a forever thing. So opportunities happen all through the year. At the beginning of 2020, which was our 25th anniversary year, one of my bucket list dreams was to take an artist to the Grammys in Los Angeles. And I was able to do that before COVID. And the artist that I took is someone who did Honey Jam 3 years ago. So we follow the artists through their entire careers. We promote what they do. One of our artists, she was a rap artist called Stella Brown from 20 years ago. She is now known as Stella Maggie, a feature film director. She directed The Photograph, and she's just been tapped to be the director of the official Whitney Houston biopic. She's going to be working with the legendary Clive Davis. And, you know, like, I just feel like a proud mama bear. So if you look at our Instagram, we're always promoting what our artists are doing decades after they were in Honey Jam.
That was a great movie. Glasper did the music. I enjoyed it very much. So thanks so much. Jonathan, Justin, just for a breakdown and to educate the students a little more, understanding the roles of a buyer or a promoter, what is the difference? What's the space they occupy? How would you break down their roles to either of you? Either one of you.
Justin, you want to take that?
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, I think for promoting, it's, how do I put this? Promoting, it's, for me, dealt with a lot of instincts. It dealt with a lot of, you know, your ability to create excitement within, you know, maybe your group of friends, within, you know, your sphere, your network of people, right? How you did it was where the magic was, right? I think when it comes with something like, you know, with buying, the instinct is still there, right? You know, I always say that, you know, money doesn't buy you good taste. And, you know, you never see that any more true than in the world of buying. And kind of, you know, the game that Jonathan and myself, and sometimes we go up against each other, you know, luckily we most of the time we operate in different territories, but, you know, it's very much relationship based. You know, it's your dealings with an artist's agent, their management, you know, and the trust that you build with those individuals and within agencies, you know, something like WME, CAA, Wasserman, UTA are some of the biggest in the world. Not only do they deal in music, they also deal in let's say, in film and television as well. You know, it's also, you know, the aspects of math. When I'm looking for buyers and recruiting them, I literally have to make sure that, you know, they understand and are very good, you know, in numbers. A lot of it is assessing probability. A lot of it is assessing risk. You know, I always say that in a lot of internal communications with at my company, you know, MRG Live, that, you know, think of us as managers of a mutual fund. We literally invest, you know, we invest dollars into, you know, these types of events and these assets in order to generate a return, which is probably the most boring thing you could say when you're talking about, you know, putting shows on for, you know, like Rule or, you know, I think we had, you know, like Conan Gray or whatever, right? Like, I think, you know, we put on a festival with like Vince Staples, which is really cool. But when we're in, you know, we're in there as a team, not only are we looking at the creative aspects, you know, we're breaking down the math. We're breaking down what our risk is, right? There's a certain amount that we know we're going to spend. This is what we need to, this is the probability of, you know, how many people are going to show up, what that looks like in terms of, you know, revenue, right? And those things are assessed alongside the art. And I think that's the really big difference when it comes to, you know, the essence of a promoter and a buyer, that, you know, from a buying level, it becomes very scientific. It becomes very mathematical. And, you know, a lot of it too, it's very much a business. So I think that's, you know, for me at least, that's the biggest difference.
Awesome. And Jonathan, do you want to speak a bit more to sort of being a promoter in that line?
Yeah, I mean, and one thing I thought about too is, I think in the sort of pre-interview, the pre-conversations we've all had, is sort of sometimes being immersed in the industry, we take for granted that people understand how things work the way we do. But just for those who don't, A promoter basically is the person who puts on the concert that you go to. They are the hub of in a so to speak, in that wheel where we are the person that books the artist, that then puts the tickets on sale, that markets the shows, that books the venue, that hires the team to operate the show, that takes the tickets when you walk in the door, not physically ourselves, but so we bring everything together. We pay the artist. So if you take out of that paradigm, if you take the promoter out, everything else sort of goes away. The artist doesn't get paid, they don't get booked, the show doesn't get produced, the venue doesn't get booked, things like that. So that's sort of in the sort of universe of the music industry, the promoter is the person at the center of the concert industry. So every time you go to a concert, there is somebody or a team of people most of the time that put it all together. So when Justin was talking about his experience on his first show, lugging gear up the stairs, it was probably just him, as it was for my first show. Now, in terms of what we do, there's companies, there's teams of people, but within those companies that we call promoters, a company say like Live Nation, there are talent buyers, and those are the people that actually specifically book the shows. So I no longer need to, make sure the person gets on stage on time. I no longer need to make sure that they get through immigration properly. I no longer need to make sure that the ticketing is set up. I have a wonderful team that does that for me, but it all starts as a talent buyer with myself booking that show, right? And again, going to Justin's point, math, not, you don't have to be a math whiz, but the numbers are everything, because it's one of those things where you could have, and I've had this experience a ton of times, you have the most wonderful show and you're feeling excited and everybody around you loves you, and then you go back to the office and you do the numbers and you just realize, oh my God, I just lost $10,000. So it's and that's, but it's what Ebony said, it's the passion then that overcomes that and gets you to the next show, right? So if you were just doing it for the money, you'd never get to your next show. You'd just be like, what am I doing? And then you'd be out. So but that's kind of, that's, hopefully people kind of understand where that fits in. And just so you know, when I started doing shows, touring and concerts were a vehicle for which an artist could promote their music. Most of the artists' income was derived from record sales, and not so much from concert touring. They would get paid for shows, but it wasn't that, didn't make up that much of the pie. Fast forward to today, the touring business and concert income is the single biggest source of revenue for artists. It overshadows payouts from streaming, from sync, from most of the time from publishing, and it's the first dollar that most artists will see. So if you're an aspiring artist, that is probably the most impactful part of your career, and that the money in this business, there's so many middlemen between you, the artist, and your fans. So money travels through a bunch of hands. If you have a label, it goes through their hands, or a publisher. The closest you'll ever get to your audience is on a stage at a show. There's no middleman. You get your message across. You don't have to wait 6 months most of the time to get paid. So I think I always try to tell people that if you're an artist, your live show and your touring business is probably the most precious thing you will own, and the thing you'll have the most control over.
Awesome. I've definitely experienced that. I like to say the most honest relationship I have in my career is with my agent, because at least when they do something, I see money. But everyone else, I'm just kind of like, what's going on? We have a little segment right now, which is sort of taking the learning further. But what I'll couple with that is really, one, again, thanks for coming. What haven't I asked you that you're like, you know what, he missed out on this. This is really important. And along with that, if you have any recommendations on books, documentaries, where should people kind of, if they're interested, kind of explore and really, I know your paths have kind of come as almost like a side hustle and blossomed into what you're doing full time, but I'd love to kind of just hear your thoughts from each of you along that. I'll start with Ebony. Start with you.
Wow, I could talk for hours and hours and hours. What I'm thinking about are the things that I was not told that I wish I had been told. Um, and the things that I find are so important to me now to know, and in terms of how I conduct myself. And it may sound a little bit airy-fairy, but just the idea of loving yourself. And when you love yourself and you don't allow certain things to happen to you, you are the captain of your ship. And so you decide how your life is going to be. And whether it succeeds or fails, you have control over that. I mentioned the issue of sexual harassment. One of the things that I did is that if a man wanted to meet with me, I would meet in the morning or at lunch, not in the evening. Like, you can control those things. You don't have to be a victim. And so don't allow it to happen. Don't just allow life to happen to you. Take charge. Keep good people around you that you can trust and that support your dreams, but who are also very straight up with you. You don't want to just have yes men around you. Learn, always be willing to learn, never be too arrogant to think that you know everything. I'm always learning every single day. And be inspired. Look at whatever it is that you want to do. Look at someone who has succeeded where you would like to be and beyond. And if they've written a book, read it. If there's some sort of place where they were honored and it takes you through their career, watch it. A lot of people that you think are bawling and that it happened overnight, it may have taken 30 years. And I was watching on the Billboard Awards, Machine Gun Kelly got an award. And he said, I've been in this business for over 15 years. This is the first award I have ever received. And he said, if I had stopped at 12 years or however many years, he wouldn't have gotten the award. And he said, suspend disbelief and invite in magic. And that, to me, encapsulates what it is to have a passion project, and where you can't not do it is just invite in the magic and continue to believe in it. So I'm going to turn over to the guys and stop talking, but I can't wait to be able to meet with you guys in person and have another one of these sessions.
Thanks, Justin. I'll kick it off to you.
Oh, thank you. I think for anyone who's thinking of going in this industry, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is not the safe road to take. It is incredibly difficult. There is something about growing up or growing old in the industry. It's actually very hard to do. It takes a lot of things where that type of focus and that drive, it will test you probably the way you've never been tested before. It might not be a big thing now in your lives, but when you start getting to an age where people start to accumulate possessions and they start to build careers, you start looking at what you make. Starting in the music industry and being here in the first few years, it's incredibly hard. Those things, you start seeing your friends, your family, they start to doubt you. It's good to have a nice family that will give you a little bit of rope, but especially coming from an immigrant family. So, but the ability to just really stay focused is important, and you have to, again, it's cliche to say it these days, but you got to bet on yourself, right? You got to bet that what you can bring to the table and what you can offer for your own type of life that you want to live is at reach, even though you feel like the deck is stacked against you. And for people who are minorities or people of color, people who are not, I'll keep it PG, but this industry doesn't have a lot of diversity. There's no especially on the industry side. The industry side is not a diverse, it's not a diverse place. It is even harder if you're a person, if you're a person of color. There are a lot of biases that are attached to, whatever they are that are attached to you. Those things, you have to break through them. I remember, someone said I couldn't book a festival because I was really good in math and I wasn't creative. What does that mean? I'm like, what am I supposed to be good at? I'm sorry that the entire accounting department are made up of Asian people, and that's where you think I should be, right? And that will happen, and it's probably no different than, unfortunately, it's nothing different that I haven't encountered everything outside of music. So it's important to know who you are, understand it's going to be difficult, but again, music industry needs representation. It needs more people to be able to, not only carry what the next generation is going to be like, but be able to put the things that are important to you, things that you care about, things that your audience is going to care about. It's funny, Jonathan actually hired me as my first job in the music industry. So, which is funny because there's actually very few executive level, minorities in music. I could probably count on both my hands in Canada. And, it's like, not that I don't think Jonathan hired me because I was a minority, but I think Jonathan saw that he was able to break through all the biases that other people had. Because trust me, I literally, was looking for jobs in other places and didn't get it. And he saw me for what my skill set was. And we need to create, and I bring that to the table when I look at building my own team and making sure that representation is there. We need to expand on that. And hopefully the next generation is a lot better than mine and what we've done. But, it needs, I think it needs to be put forth that the people here have to understand it's going to be really difficult. But you are making a difference. It does make things better. You do push art. You do push, what's important to you. And, that's going to be what your lasting legacy is going to be if you do enter music, is that you actually want to change something.
Thanks, Justin. I appreciate that. Actually, it's funny you mentioned the accumulation of things, and I think about kind of my journey and now getting to a place where my peers are buying the houses and things like that. And I've been, on the creative side, I was like, I guess I'm a bit of a late bloomer. Maybe I'll get there at some point, but I appreciate that a lot. Jonathan, obviously asking you the same question, but also would love for you to kind of just color coming out of COVID, this live space, and not even so much your predictions, but, I would say maybe some of the things of what do we need to rethink? What are the things that need to happen as we hopefully get back to being able to go see our favorite artists, being able to ourselves as artists get back on stage and where that's going. But the first piece first.
Well, I mean, I want to touch on something that Justin said, because it's when I hired Justin, it was, not because of his good looks and his penchant for math, but he came to me highly recommended by someone whose opinion I value. And that was what opened the door. And that's really what happened. And there wasn't much of a interviewing process. There wasn't much of a thing. And I say that to sort of reiterate in any business, but in this business especially, your reputation is everything. It is everything. It comes before you and it stays after you. And that to me is you protect it with your life. And that means your word, that means your commitment, how you treat people, because you don't know who's watching. And especially in now in this day and age, you don't know who will be watching eventually. Things never die on the internet. So, but that's one thing. It's in any business, but this one especially. This business is based on reputation. The show I told you, Thompson, that I booked with the Far Side, I booked it off of an agent who I had no idea. I knew eventually who she was, But that very first show I booked with that agent, she is still to this day one of the most powerful agents in the music business, and I still do business with her on a regular basis. So that is, to me, I would tell you, there's books you can read, there's the internet, read everything, and the business is hard. But if I tell people, if you love music, there's not a more rewarding industry to be in. Like, it's tough, but the highs are incredible, right? Money aside, and I tell a fun fact for me, I didn't go to my first after party till 10 years into this business. So all of that stuff that's around the business, it's sort of, it just, for me, it was just the passion about doing shows. So, there, again, like Ebonnie, I could go on in so many anecdotes, but as far as where we go from now, I think the one thing that this pandemic has illustrated as it pertains to the industry is there is no replacement for live music. All right, there's replacements for for everything right now, right? This is a replacement for us doing a panel discussion in person. It maybe is not as good, but that's what it is. There's a replacement from working in an office, is working from home. There's music you can get is becoming increasingly disposable in terms of recorded music and how people consume it and how fast they consume it. But it's something that I think we in the business always knew, but now I think the world knows that there is nothing that replaces your favorite artist standing 10 feet in front of you on a stage belting out your favorite song. So it's reinforced our belief in terms of the value, and it's created now what we're hoping for, and we all believe is a pent-up demand for this music. So when the floodgates finally open, and it's happening in the US already, sadly it's not happening here yet, but with festivals, there's a bunch of festivals in the US, Rolling Loud is one, there's a bunch of them that these festivals are selling out in one day. They're selling 30, 40, 50,000 tickets in a single day, simply because people are like, wow, I want to go out. I want to be around people. I want to be able to share the passion for music with these other people. Sometimes I'll spend a lot of my time during a show backstage in the production office or somewhere where I'm not around people, because at some point you're like, too many people. I've learned I'll never complain about that again, being in a crowded room. I want to be shoulder to shoulder with people that know the same lyrics that I know, that that trade, like other music nerds, things like that. So it's I think that's really a valuable thing, and what they're predicting, and it's kind of borne out so far in terms of ticket sales for tours for that are happening later this year, but in 2022, I think when The Weeknd put his tour on sale, he goes on tour I think January of next year, but a month ago he put his tour on sale and the whole thing sold out in days. We're talking a global tour in arenas all over the world, and that just illustrates the pent-up demand and what people see in terms of the value of music, right? And then that feeds back, if you're an artist, to what I was saying about your single biggest source of revenue will be your live show.
That's really great. I'm going to be putting that on my Instagram as soon as this is done. No replacement for live music. It's actually really given me a newfound appreciation for the audience and my audience and all the things that you take for granted. And as an artist, who are we without our audience? And so that resonated with me so much. At this time, I want to open up the floor to some questions from a representative from the RPSM Youth Committee. For those who are unfamiliar with the Youth Committee, the committee is a youth-wide group of young leaders, high school aged. They meet virtually every week at this time, Thursdays at 7 to 8, to engage in social activities and discussions, educational workshops like this one, and leadership and development. If you're looking for some information or interested in signing up or signing your child up, feel free to email Jasper at studentdevelopment@rpmusic.org, and we'll put that email in the chat. I'd like to call on Galila to unmute and ask the first question to get this started.
My first question is, how much education was involved in getting into the field that you're in now? Like, what type of education did you need or anything like that?
I mean, I'll start because the funny thing is the answer is probably zero.
Yeah,
I went to school for business and marketing and economics. I, in any part of my career, never used economics until I actually started doing shows and more later into my career. And how that works when you're dealing with a lot of artists, a lot of shows, a lot of investments, and in turn a lot of money. But I think the best education that you can probably get from starting in this, especially in the live side or promoting side, is actually going and doing it, learning from your mistakes. I always make the joke that there's a difference between promoters that are built up in a system, like in a large company, and ones who went out there and did it themselves. The people who did it themselves and who independently know what it's like to run to a cash machine in the middle of the night and empty their savings. That type of education and that type of feeling and how that changes your perspective, even when you're dealing with, I'm not going to put it out there like in terms of the actual amount, but let's just say like I deal with, close to 9 figures, a year in terms of investments, in terms of things that are going in and out of, the company I work for and what our bank accounts are. That type of what you learn from putting in your own money and winning and losing from that, and how that changes even when you're working on a large scale, it stays with you. It never goes away. And for me, it's like, yeah, if I didn't go to school, would I still be doing this job? I probably would be. But you take bits and pieces of where you learn, no matter where they are, and it helps you form not only how you approach the business, and how you approach art, but it also you put a lot of yourself into how you do that work. A lot of times there's people who don't understand, they can't stomach risk, they can't stomach uncertainty. This is a bad industry for that. Right? You need to be able to deal with the unknown. Because a lot of times you don't know what the future holds, right? But yeah, I mean, it's always great to have an education, because there's a ton of things that you can learn from, you can absorb and learn from, but the best experience is actually going out and doing it.
Yeah, and yeah, I just quickly add, it depends. When I started, there were no music education programs. Fortunately now, I think every post-secondary institution offers some sort of music education programs, and then there are some that are dedicated specifically to that. Most of it's available on the internet, but I would tell people to sort of go uneducated. For me, I probably spent a lot of money, time, and effort learning things the hard way. But it's really about understanding sort of how it all works. But there are very few barriers to entry into the music industry. It's not like, if you're practicing law, you have to write a bar exam. If you're doing medicine, you have to do 7 years of school. But that's a good and a bad thing, right? So it means anybody can get in the industry, and you meet a lot of people that shouldn't be in this industry. But at the same time, it means that you, from your basement, your bedroom, your home, can leapfrog into this industry really quickly. There are artists, especially through COVID, there are artists that this time last year were recording songs in their bedroom and now are charting on Billboard and doing award shows, and are slated to sell out their tours in 2022. So it depends on your thing, but there is no easy fix, right? There is no like, I want to be an artist, I'm going to record some stuff, I'm going to upload it to SoundCloud, and then I'm just going to wait for the money to pour in or the like. So it's a hard road, and there's a lot of false starts. But yeah, I mean, on the back end of it, as far as the industry itself, I'd encourage anybody who wants to do it for a living to research some things and see. School is not for everyone, and it doesn't mean you can't. Just like Justin said, it doesn't mean you can't do it if you don't have a formal education in the music industry, but it is there and it's available. And I would encourage people to at least explore that.
I am an English major. I didn't have any formal education for any of the things that I now do. I'm a graduate of the School of Hard Knocks. And what I would encourage everyone to do is to intern somewhere. It depends on what your interest is in the industry. Are you an artist? Do you want to be a producer? Do you want to be a manager? So a lot of it depends on that in terms of what advice we would give you on what to do. So you would just do your research, find someone who is in that position and pick their brain and ask them about the types of things. But no matter what you want to do, so even if you want to be an artist, I would encourage artists to understand what a promoter does, to understand what someone who programs songs for radio does. Like every single aspect of your business, you should have a curiosity about and try to get some knowledge so that you understand the big picture. There's no downside to knowing as much as you can. So there's lots of free stuff on the internet. There are music schools like Harris and Trebas. There are online courses. There are conferences you can go to like North by Northeast and Canadian Music Week and all of these different things, which are also great to network with people from all different areas of the industry. We do something called a mentor cafe, which is kind of like speed dating, where we have about 20 different people who act as mentors, and you kind of play musical chairs. So you're sitting across from an entertainment lawyer and you get to pick their brain for 10 minutes, and then boop, you go to the next one and you're sitting across from Jonathan, and then you're sitting across from Julie Black. And it's something that the artists love and that the mentors really love. It's so energizing to be able to share and to be able to receive all of that knowledge. So that's what I would advise.
Great, amazing. Thanks, Galila. Thanks for starting off our Q&A with that question. Are there any other questions from the audience for our panelists? Either put them in the chat or you can also jump in.
I'll read one. But first I want to shout out Honey Jam. I think I auditioned for it like 10 years ago, and everyone just like do it for the audition experience. Anything you can do, like it was such a good time, and I like still have friends from it. Okay, this is for you, Ebonnie. In regards to doing your passion, what if you're not sure what your passion is, or if you have more than one passion? How do you still follow your passion? So quite a few questions in there, but yeah.
So it will find you. Like it will find you. I don't know what else to say. Yeah. It will choose you, like you'll just find yourself being drawn to different things. So when I was in high school, I thought that I wanted to be a teacher, but teaching has become a part of everything that I do, and the idea of mentorship and educating others. I just don't have a teaching certificate, and I'm not inside of a school doing it. But I just knew that that was something that I wanted to do, and I wanted to work with other people. And I always wanted to do things in the community. I was always an activist from when I was 11 years old, when I discovered Malcolm X. I don't even remember the sequence of events where that happened, but it just resonated with me, and it lit a fire within me. So I didn't go looking for it. And then along the journey, with all the things that you have to do as an entrepreneur, you find skills that you didn't even know you had because you're forced to do them. And then it's like, wow, I can actually do this thing that you didn't even know that you could. So I think you'll find it. You'll know yourself. You'll know the things that you love to do. You might love to cook. You might love to do sports. You know, you might love certain elements of music. Like I think if you just, I think it will hit you.
Forgot to shout out that question was from Akeem, so hopefully that helped you, Akeem.
Hey, Akeem.
Yeah. That's it, Thompson.
Thanks, Charlotte. Do we have time for one more question before we move on to our director, Mr. Richard? But we're not ready for you yet. Let's see if there's one in the chat. Does there anyone else have a question? Going once.
That was it for questions, but I'll ask one. Are there any artists you're dying to see out there once we can be out with experiencing live music with each other?
Okay, this is going to be very quick. I said to everyone, once things open up, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's accordion music. I am going, I'm staying all night, I'm dancing, I'm wearing whatever skirts they wear, and I'm going to be happy about it. So that's my answer.
Ebony, you realize this is being recorded, right?
Oh no.
The part where you say I'm going and staying all night. I might just screenshot that part of the video and play it for your friends.
Okay, that's fine.
I have a question.
Just seeing Jonathan.
Hi, it's Tara. I actually work in live entertainment with MLSE, and I wanted to ask Jonathan or Justin if you guys have any upcoming shows that are looking to book or want to book before, like, as soon as shows can happen again.
I book out of the U.S. as well as in Canada. Let's just put it this way: there are going to be a lot of shows in parts of California and in the Pacific Northwest as soon as August, September, and that's without restrictions. We have an office in Miami. There's a guy out there that does a lot of electronic shows. They're already living in the future. I think they were living in the future 2.5 months ago. But yeah, I think with regards to anything on an arena level or things that are more concrete in Toronto, or I mean, there's a high probability for shows to come back in October and November. For anything on a larger scale, we're looking into next year. So I would say spring next year is probably most realistic if we're looking at things on a larger scale. Maybe Jonathan has something cooking. I don't know.
I mean, I'm excited because there's a ton of artists. I probably won't see all of them. And I don't know how long that energy is going to last for me, where I want to go out every night and see shows before I'm like, okay, I'm good. But it's really what the one part I'm looking at, what always sort of charged me up at shows, and this goes back to my very first show, was I get a lot of satisfaction out of watching people at shows, and not in a creepy way, but more in the kind of like, I remember my very, very, very first show at that Far Side show. I was standing at the back. I was kind of exhausted. It was halfway through the show, and my girlfriend at the time was standing beside me, and I was kind of like I looked a little drained, but she just looked at me, and we were at the back of the room, and there were like 500 people in front of us, and she's like, "You did that." And to me, that was part of it. It was like watching that energy that I was a small part of bringing that together. So whether it's like, 15-year-olds or 16-year-olds or 25-year-olds, but it's like you're putting those people together, and then the satisfaction that will come eventually from those artists that maybe sometimes took fans for granted. and no longer, right? That they will come off the stage and they will just, it's those artists that, you have to actually like pull them off the stage. You're like, you can't do 7 encores. People have to go home. It's that kind of thing. I think artists will have a whole new appreciation for fans, but that's really what I'm looking for. There are a lot of shows. There's a lot of new music for artists that broke during COVID that will tour, and these guys have never done shows in their life. All they've done is, record music out of their bedroom. And I'm looking forward to seeing that kind of stuff. So you're probably in the next couple of weeks, you're just going to start seeing tons of shows just happen. I think but it's really for me, the energy of the people that are going there.
Amazing. Thanks so much. Thanks for the question, Tara. So we just want to give a big thank you again to our panelists. We enjoyed your insights, and this was a lot of fun. Lucas has put up all the media handles in the comment section, so you can look for them there. As always, this will be up at some point in time when Jasper edits it and makes it beautiful and cuts out all the popping and whatever. Thank you to Lucas, Simone, and Charlotte from the Youth Committee for helping support this event. A big thank you to Stephanie Purificati and Jasper Gahunya for bringing this series to life. Always bringing us wonderful people, and we love your reach in the industry, and clearly people like you. Still not sure what, but clearly you've got a great network going on. Shout out and thanks to Devin Good Food for the discounts and food deal that they provide for our online events. Please check out our YouTube channel as well as Every Little Voice podcast for the past RPSM recordings. Make sure you RSVP for the next one happening. I am Thompson Egbo, and this concludes the 4th installment of RPSM Talks. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this today.